Well, nearly 2 million Brits have signed a petition calling on President Trump's official state visit to be cancelled. On Monday, thousands of protesters gathered outside Parliament in London as British lawmakers debated whether to deny Trump a formal state visit. Inside Parliament, MPs debated for 3 hours. This is Labour MP Naz Shah.
In the last 31 days, what we have seen has in many ways been chilling. The executive orders that have dominated Donald Trump's first weeks in the White House have been frightening. And the question many of us are asking, where does this slippery slope really lead? If we take only one of the groups of people he has sought to divide, those of a Muslim faith, not necessarily distinct to one country or another, his rhetoric has been so broad that even I, personally, as a Muslim, feel attacked and misrepresented. And no doubt many of my constituents who make wonderful contributions to this country on a daily basis feel the same way. We have to take every opportunity to show that his negativity and divisive messages are not going to divide us, and just as importantly, we cannot let them define us.
Meanwhile, Tory MP Julian Lewis said he supported the state visit and hopes the United Kingdom can influence Trump, who he referred to as a, quote, inexperienced individual. This is Conservative MP Jacob Rees-Mogg, followed by the Labour Party's Paul Flynn.
What complaint did the honourable gentleman make when Emperor Hirohito came here, who was responsible for the rape of Nanking?
Certainly we can't try to imitate the errors of the past. We should set an example by making sure that we don't make those mistakes again.
For more, we're going to London, where we're joined by Asad Rehman of Friends of the Earth International, who spoke at the protests outside Parliament yesterday. Asad, thanks so much for being with us again. We usually speak to you at the UN Climate Summit, wherever it is happening in the world. Talk about what's happening right now and what you think is going to happen with this state visit of President Trump.
Well, since President Trump's various executive orders targeting the Muslim ban, and of course his outrageous comments against women and migrant communities, the normalizing of hatred, bigotry and xenophobia. A large number of British people, and I think right across the political spectrum, find it absolutely abhorrent that this government should roll out a red carpet for President Trump. And the state visit is an honour that is bestowed by the UK government. It's not something that happens automatically, and nearly 2 million people signed a petition asking the government to withdraw its offer of a state visit. Hundreds of thousands of people have now been mobilising on the streets. In fact, yesterday was the fourth big mobilisation that there's been to send a message to this government that they should listen to the British people. And there has been already a commitment that if Donald Trump steps inside this country, and when he does, that there will be a huge mobilisation. We intend to put millions of people on the street, not only to oppose Donald Trump and his agenda, but also to hold up a mirror about what's happening both in the UK and across Europe. And listening to your previous guest, talking about the normalisation of racism and attacks on migrants and refugees, talking about how we are slowly moving into a space where the far-right and extreme right-wing parties are dominating our political space, and how we have to be able to oppose that, and we have to actively oppose that. And to do that, we need to build a movement that is much more inclusive and brings together a different spectrum of views and organisations. And that's why, Friends of the Earth, we're one of the organisers of the Stop Trump Coalition, and we, together with trade unions, Muslim organisations, migrant organisations, have been organising these huge protests that have been taking place, because we think that this struggle for climate justice, for climate refugees, is a struggle for justice, and it's the same struggle against whether we're talking against sexism, sexist violence, racism or bigotry.
And Asad, I wanted to ask you about Theresa May, the Prime Minister, who's obviously extended her hand to Trump, and her relationship, her reaction to what's happened here. And, of course, famously, when she did visit Washington, Trump tried to grab her hand as they were walking in the White House, and she pulled back.
Well, that image, I think, will live on in most people's minds, and it sort of sums up the picture and of that relationship. I mean, many people felt, that of course we're in a post-Brexit world, and the UK has voted in the referendum last year to leave the European Union. There's a great deal of uncertainty as to what that actually means. Many people are arguing for a hard Brexit, which could lead to real crisis in terms of our economy and jobs, and of course the issue of migration is being played very much by some forces to justify a vote to leave the European Union. Now, all of those things means that this government is basically willing to accept anything from the US administration, and that's part of what I think has angered so many people, that what the UK is hoping that by cozying up to Donald Trump, by accepting the kind of views that he's espousing, that somehow we will manage to get a trade deal. Unfortunately, we know what kind of trade deal that will be. The trade deal will be that we will have given up our rights, we would have given up decency, we would have accepted this agenda of hatred, and in return we would have had a trade deal of deregulation, of weakening labour laws, environment protection. We would have had to give up in terms of our controls around our food, our health, and all of those things are just, I think, unacceptable, and all of that is part of the agenda of actually making Theresa May say, take a step back and think again about rolling out this red carpet.
We want to go back to Monday's parliamentary debate on whether the state visit of Donald Trump should be cancelled. Green Party MP Caroline Lucas said Trump's climate change denials alone should disqualify him from being invited.
Many of them have raised not only Trump's misogyny and racism, but also his contempt for basic climate science. Would the honourable member agree that to have a state visit for someone who has shown such effrontery to basic climate science is another reason to say that he should not be coming here?
So that was inside Parliament, as thousands were outside. What's coming of this vote, and what actually will happen?
Well, the vote is not a binding vote, but I think it was very clear from the speakers who spoke in Parliament yesterday, the number of people who contacted their members of Parliament, that the overwhelming majority of members of Parliament also oppose that this government, the state visit of Donald Trump. We've heard unprecedented that the Speaker of the House, one of the most powerful positions in the House of Commons, has himself said he thinks it's absolutely inappropriate that if Donald Trump comes on a state visit, that he should be allowed the honour of speaking in Parliament to our Parliament, both the House of Commons and House of Lords. This is an incredible rejection of Donald Trump and his agenda, and we heard it last night, and we heard it from right across the political spectrum, and it's really now up to the government to listen to those voices, because we have been here in the past where, of course, we have had a Prime Minister who has been willing to accept an American agenda, and that led us into a really disastrous war. 2 million people marched on the street, and of course that Prime Minister's reputation is in tatters now. And I think there's a stark warning to Theresa May that cozying up to Donald Trump could end up with her and her reputation being in similar tatters.
Well, we want to thank you for being with us, Asad Rehman, spokesperson for Friends of the Earth International. That does it for our show. Belated happy birthday to Neil Shabada. Democracy Now! Is produced by Mike Burke, Nermeen Sheikh, Carla Wills, Laura Gaddisdiener, Dina Guzder, Sam Malkoff, Robbie Karen, Hani Massoud, Shireen Endura, and Andre Lewis. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez for another edition of Democracy Now!